If you're not sure how similar or how different are ISO 27001, the cybersecurity standard, and ISO 42001, the AI governance standard, then this video is for you. So I'll show you what the main similarities are, but also what the main differences are and how those differences actually are represented in ISO 42001 clauses. And I'll also show you where you can download a free white paper where you will see the mapping of all the clauses from ISO 27001 and ISO 42001. So after you watch this video, you'll have a clear idea on how you can use ISO 27001 to help you with ISO 42001 implementation. So if you've heard of ISO 27001 before, then you know that this has actually become the most important, the biggest standard for cybersecurity governance. And basically the same thing is expected from ISO 42001 for AI governance. And since both of these standards are about governance and are basically about IT systems, let's then examine what are the similarities and differences in these two standards. Okay, let's start with the similarities first. So first thing that is basically the same is the structure of the standard. Both 27001 and 42001 have these clauses 4 to 10, which are basically the same, at least in the name. Of course, there are some differences in these clauses, which I'll show you later on during the video, but these top level clauses are actually the same. And this is because this ISO 42001 follows this high-level structure from ISO organization, which basically means that all management standards, including also 9001, 14001, have this high-level structure, meaning these top-level clauses the same. Further, what is the same is the purpose of the Annex A in both of these standards. So ISO 27001 lists 93 controls which are used to decrease cybersecurity risks, whereas 42001 lists also controls. However, here you have 38 controls which are used to decrease risks related to AI systems. Now, the method of choosing which of these controls will be applied, and by the way, none of these controls are mandatory, is actually the same. So you have to perform the risk assessment, and then based on the results of the risk assessment, you actually choose which of these controls are the most appropriate for decreasing those risks. So again, both of these standards have exactly the same principle. And following this logic, both of these standards prescribed the document called Statement of Applicability, where you list all of the controls from the Annex A, and then for each control you define whether it's applicable or not, and then you also have to justify if you have excluded or included a particular control. And at the end of this risk management process, both of these standards prescribed that companies need to write this risk treatment plan, so basically an implementation plan for the controls that are not yet implemented. So as you can see, both of these standards are risk-based and this process is fairly similar. Now, there are many other things that are very similar or even the same in these two standards, like requirements for internal auditing, for management review, for setting the objectives, for documented information, for providing resources, for training and awareness, for setting the objectives. All of these requirements are, if not exactly the same, then very, very similar. Now, before you start thinking that everything is the same, let's now dig into the differences. What is different is, of course, the focus. ISO 27001 focuses on cybersecurity, meaning the preservation of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. Whereas ISO 42001 focuses on AI governance, and basically this means achieving trustworthiness of companies' AI systems. And as I already mentioned, even though the purpose of the Annex A is the same, the controls are very different. In ISO 27001 you have controls like network security, like backup, and you have nothing like this in ISO 42001. The controls in Annex A are speaking about how you manage data with which you train your AI systems, how you manage the whole AI system lifecycle, and so on. Also, what is very different is that 42001 introduces this concept of AI system impact assessment, and this is not the same thing as AI risk assessment. So these are actually two parallel concepts in ISO 42001. Whereas AI risk assessment is about finding things that potentially could happen in the future and that are basically negative, whereas AI system impact assessment focuses on the things that will certainly happen in the future because of the usage of AI systems. Whereas as an AI risk, you could have, let's say, this prompt injection, which is basically some kind of a malware, which could potentially happen in the future, but this is not very certain. whereas for AI system impact assessment, you could have actually hallucinations, which are much more certain. You could have bias, or you could have an impact that you will certainly have to reduce the number of employees or change actually their job description. And there is also another difference between AI risk assessment and AI system impact assessment, and that is that AI risk assessment also focuses on the risks for the company, whereas AI system impact assessment considers only the impacts on individuals and the society. Clause 4.1 is also very different between these two standards, because ISO 42001 requires companies to define what is their role with regards to AI systems. So they have to specify whether they're AI provider, AI producer, AI developer, AI customer, these kind of things. Whereas 27001 does not specify anything similar. There are also some differences in annexes. So ISO 27001 has only this Annex A, whereas 42001 has also annexes B, C, and D. And Annex B is especially important because actually it provides guidance on how you can actually implement the controls from Annex A. So whereas in 42001 Annex A, you actually have a control with a very short definition, very short requirements. In Annex B, for each of these controls, you have, let's say, half a page or a full page of explanation of how this control could be implemented. And if you know this series of ISO 27000 standards, you will notice that this ISO 27001 and 2 actually has this role of implementation guidance, so the same thing as the Annex B in 42001. Annex C from 42001 is also interesting because it provides you a list of potential objectives that your company could achieve with regards to AI systems, but also potential risk sources, which is very interesting when you do the risk assessment. And there is also this Annex D, which is not so helpful, but it provides you some information on how you could integrate ISO 42001 with ISO 27001, but also ISO 27701, the privacy standard, and also ISO 9001, the quality management standard. Okay, let's see now how do these similarities and differences look like when we map them to the clauses of ISO 42001. So as you can see from clauses 4 and 5, only clause 4.1 is slightly different because of this definition of the role of the company with regards to AI systems. Regarding clause 6.1.1 is slightly different from 27001 because it's slightly longer, although when you read it there is not much actually useful text there, even though it's longer. And of course there is this completely new clause 6.1.4 regarding AI system impact assessment. And then finally, clauses 7, 9 and 10 are basically the same in these two standards, whereas clause 8 is slightly different because among other things it speaks about how to update the AI system impact assessment, which of course does not exist in 27001. And of course all the annexes are very different between these two standards. Okay, I'll show you now briefly a white paper that maps these clauses between 42001 and 27001 in even more detail. Okay, this is how the PDF document looks like when you download it, and as you will see here in this column are displayed the clauses from 27001, and in this column clauses from 42001. And as I already explained, the general structure is basically the same, but every now and then you will see that some clauses are a little bit different. And here in this column explanation, you will see an overview of basically what these clauses are saying and also what are the differences. So let's scroll down to this clause 4.1 about the context. As you can see, the name of the clause is the same, but here you actually see an explanation of the difference between 42001 and 27001. So the explanation that the companies need to explain their role with regards to AI. Okay, let's see some other differences. For example, clause 6.1.4, as you can see, it is displayed only for 42001. It does not exist in 27, and here is an explanation of what actually the requirement is. Okay, hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about this mapping between 27001 and 42001. And to download this free white paper that I was showing you, click the link in the description below, and you'll be able simply to register in the form and download right away this white paper to your local disk. And see also my next video that gives a much more detailed explanation of each and every clause from ISO 42001. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos about AI governance and cybersecurity governance every week. Thanks for watching.